And we are live. Happy, what day is it? Tuesday, everybody? I don't even know anymore. Welcome to this delightful webinar. We're going to give people a few minutes to get in still. I still see the numbers ticking up, and we've got some questions coming in still. So we will sit and chat for just a moment or two whilst everybody manages to get a drink or a coffee or lunch or breakfast or whatever it is you're doing in your time zone. I see a lot of people from all over the world joining in. That's very exciting. What have we got? We had we were very excited to see some people from the Shetland Islands. That's very remote. Yeah, we were looking. It's about 4 hours from where I am in the middle of the UK via 2 boats, 3 trains, and several cars. So that might be a winner so far.
It might take longer to get there than it would to New York.
Yeah, I was thinking it's less overall distance and it's more kind of how awkward are the hops and the transfers, isn't it?
Exactly. So it could be an interesting vacation this year with COVID.
True. That's about as remote as you can get, a tiny little island way off in the North Sea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad plan. Right. Okay. Let's give people another 30 seconds. Who is from the most remote place? That's what we should do. Tell us in the chat if you're from somewhere particularly far away from anyone or anything.
I mean, Mumbles, Wales. It's pretty remote and dark down there.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Oh, some people on the Adriatic. I must have.
Like for us, I think Mars. Someone from Mars. That's quite a way away.
Just being very rude to people in remote parts of the UK. That's what we're doing tonight.
Portsmouth, New Hampshire. That is not too well populated.
And there we go, Bud from Mars itself. Very nice. One of the first set of colonists. I think this concerns me. At some point, we will need to consider our SEO and ranking strategies for Google Mars, right? Well, at the moment, all of our strategies are based on Earth technology and Earth-centric users. Time zones will be a pain. Content will be a pain. Interesting.
I think it's very optimistic to suggest that Google will still be the dominant company in 200 years' time or whatever.
Interesting. And maybe video will take over all formats. Yeah. So on that note, let's get started. So we should do some very quick intros. Hello and welcome. This is this week's exciting Yoast SEO webinar, all about video SEO tactics, strategy, high-level thinking, hands-on kit, and everything in between. If you're not familiar with Yoast, congrats on getting here regardless, but we're best known for our delightfully wonderful WordPress SEO plugin, our video SEO plugin, hint, hint. I saw we asked a survey when people joined saying, are you doing video and are you using our plugin? And there was an interestingly large amount of people who said, no, we're not. So bear that in mind. And also, I should make a point of plugging before we start. If you struggle to understand anything Phil says and he leaves you scared and confused, which is definitely possible, check out Yoast SEO Academy, where you can pause him and rewind him and learn all about video SEO on your own time. So without further ado, I'm Jono. I'm from Team Yoast. That's not important. What you need to know is this is the incredible, the world-renowned, the undisputed king of video SEO and video brand strategy and many, many other things, including all sorts of strange backgrounds with being a stunt double and being a musician and who knows what else. This is the incredible Phil Nottingham, who is going to spend the next 30, 40 minutes telling you everything you need to know about video SEO. Then we'll do some Q&A, answer your questions, and see where we go from there. So without further ado, over to you, Phil. Please feel free to share your screen. I will hop off and we'll go from there. Good luck.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jono, for that illustrious introduction, which I'm in no way deserving of, but I will take nonetheless. And lovely to be with you all today from my house in London in the UK, and lovely to be with you wherever you are in the world. And thank you very much for turning up and being with us tonight. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to take you through just a few pointers about video SEO, video marketing strategy, and then we can start to talk about some of the questions you have about how you can best start creating and using video to drive traffic and revenue and all that juicy, lovely stuff for your business. So I'm just going to share my screen. And there we go. So hopefully that's all working and you can shout if it is not. So how to boost traffic to your website. So let's think about what we have in the world today. the web is constructed of, essentially primary languages, front-end development languages that are built off the back of code and all the other things that we work with. So, WordPress, a lot of PHP and things pulls together. Language is the most increasingly prominent web language that we rarely ever talk about, which is video. Because the web is fundamentally now a video communication tool. If we think about our day-to-day interactions, every time we go on social media, we scroll through and we see these videos popping up. Every time we're on a website, we're watching video, we are watching moving image, and this has become a fundamental fabric, a fundamental language of the web, and is no longer something that is like an additional add-on or is like a version of taking TV and then putting that online. It's increasingly much more just a fundamental means of communication, a media type. It's like images, it's like text, it's like JavaScript and CSS and HTML. So those of us who are working in web development and web marketing need to start to become understanding how to really think effectively about video in a more fundamental way, and start to think of it as a tool that we can use throughout our marketing strategy, rather than just as a very small segment of it. And as we will have noticed, because of how much video has become the dominant language of the web over the past, sort of 10 years, really, it's going to get even more so. And if you haven't already started investing in video, which from the survey we sent out, I think about maybe half of you haven't, then now's the time, because this is the next stage of. Previously, if you didn't have a website, you were going to get left behind, and now if you don't have video as your fundamental language, you're also going to get left behind. So Wistia, a company that I used to work with, and a company in Boston that does a lot of video hosting, put together a survey that they just launched a few weeks ago that had some really interesting data based on what we saw over the pandemic and through 2020 and how businesses were behaving. And it's often been cited, I think, that the COVID is in many ways the great accelerator of web trends and marketing trends. And I think this is absolutely becoming true in the world of video, where we can see, if we look at the data, that the uploads in 2020 were much, much longer than all the previous years. Things were steadily getting longer, but now they're even longer than they were before. So 450 million videos uploaded in terms of length, and the longer videos seem to be getting much more prominent on the platform. So this indicates that while previously we were all just making ads, we're now making more interesting and more varied types of videos, like how-to content, like webinars, like podcasts, like what we're doing now. So longer form creative is taking hold in a way that previously it hadn't, and where video used to be just sort of product videos and adverts, now it's much more varied, and there's a different kind of video for all different types of marketing that you might be engaging in. They also showed in this survey that the minutes watched of videos by year had gone up dramatically as well. So we saw a near 100%, 85% increase in video consumption last year. Now, I think that this is going to hold. I don't think this is just an anomaly of 2020 and then we're going to go back to the old ways. I think we have now set a new force that really what we do online essentially and is consume a lot of video. And note that this is not, in this survey, it's not just sort of video across the board. This is specifically business video content created by businesses to market to consumers or other businesses. So this is content that is ostensibly marketing content. And this is being viewed nearly twice as much last year as it was the year before. And that was off the back of steady, consistent increases. So that great accelerant that we saw has pushed things even further in the direction of video becoming a fundamental language and a fundamental means of communication online. So no longer will we start to talk about a video strategy. Soon, a video strategy will be what your marketing strategy is. And to talk of the two interchangeably will not make much sense. So if you're not already investing in video, you need to start investing now. And if you are investing in video, you need to start to think about doing new kinds of video and start to think about how you can use video perhaps more strategically in your business. Of course, every social network is a video platform. Facebook launched video about 4 years ago now, and it's now anytime you go onto your phone and you pick it up and you scroll, you'll notice that most of the content that you go past is videos. YouTube is obviously, the biggest video platform by a country mile in terms of amount of content uploaded and consumed. Twitter has tons of native video. Instagram is now as much video as it was image. LinkedIn has native video. And of course, over the last couple of years, we've seen the rise of TikTok really cement itself as perhaps a sixth prominent platform here that is also primarily video-based. So social media marketing is video marketing. And I think for most businesses, this is where they end up investing most of their time and money in terms of what they're doing with video. However, there's a lot more that you could be doing with video. It's not just about social media, even though that's where most of the money has gone. And the reason most of the money has gone to social media in terms of video marketing is that it is the platforms that most readily replicate the strategies of old. So advertising and buying placements that we used to do with TV, and big media companies who want to work in that way have just been able to transpose their budgets straight from television to social media, and perhaps even less efficiently than they were back then. But this has become the primary way we use video. But we can actually think of video much, much more broadly. And not only is every social media platform now a video platform, but video is also, I think, a critical tool for traffic acquisition. And this, for me, is what we really mean by video SEO. It's not just about using video on YouTube or anything else or other platforms. It's really about using video to drive traffic to your website or to your primary assets online in terms of generating revenue via sales or whatever else it might be. So we need to start thinking of video more broadly than social media towards actually giving us traffic. And this is what we mean by video SEO. So the first question is really, well, okay, what should we be making to drive traffic to our website? Because there's a lot of things we might be making for Facebook that probably aren't really going to send us traffic to our website. If we're doing lots of Instagram influencer marketing, is that going to drive us traffic? So we perhaps need to think a bit differently about the kind of content we should be creating. And I think there are a number of different pieces of content that every business, no matter what kind of website or whatever else you have, should be investing in. And I'm going to go through these now. So the first one is an About Us video. And here's the example from Yoast. Here, nice, professionally produced video that really shows off the team and explains who we are, what we do, what the business is all about. And I think that everyone should start to invest in one of these. So an About Us video is probably the first video that you should make if you've not made one yet. Because what it can do is allow you to crystallize your brand voice from a video perspective, allow you to get your people front and center, which is probably the most important thing in video. It's about breaking the barriers between consumers and businesses, those communication barriers, to allow you to put a personal face on your business and be more open about who you are and what you're all about. So these About Us videos should be about 2 to 3 minutes long. It should explain the culture and the product that you have so that anybody arriving on your website for the first time can really understand who you are, what you're about very quickly, and then feel that they have built a sense of trust and a sense of rapport with you. Next kind of videos you should make are, of course, product videos. Now, these are probably more specific and more focused than your general About Us videos. So it's not about the company itself. It's about the product or the services that you are investing in. Now, these should normally be a bit shorter because the key thing is to get to a specific point and the specific value proposition of whatever product you have. And I would recommend making one of these for each product variant or feature that you have in your business. So, if you're a shoe company, one for each different type of shoe you have. If you're a software company, one for each of the major features as part of your product, whatever it might be. And critically, with this kind of content, to make it effective, you want to ensure that the person who is narrating or presenting the video is not necessarily the best performer, not necessarily somebody who is the most natural on camera, but somebody who has that genuine product expertise. Because it's this that ultimately builds trust. We are very comfortable now with having amateurs on video. When we watch video, we don't expect it to be an actor. This is not the world of television advertising. We expect it to be someone who is genuine. And the more genuine and the more authoritative they are, the more value that provides for the product video itself. And of course, you need to demonstrate their core value proposition. So the third type of video you should be making is support videos. So obviously, if you have any product or service that you're offering, people are going to have FAQs and queries about that particular product. You as a business owner or a marketing director or whatever your particular role is will probably know what these are or be able to find them out through just Google Search Console or your general FAQ page, whatever it might be. Now, these videos should be 1 to 5 minutes in length usually, so they're a bit longer than your product videos or your About Us video. They should cover each specific question in one video. And if you don't really know where to start here, I'd recommend just going onto YouTube, typing in your brand name, and seeing what ranks already, because that is going to tell you, what people's major queries are, and see if anybody else has made a video that's essentially trying to answer that question. And if they have, go and make a better one that's got your brand on it that allows you to control that conversation. So start to think about creating videos for support, dependent on whatever is necessary for your particular business and what your customers really care about and need to know. You should then also start to think about some how-to videos. So you've also got your support videos, which are branded because they're about your product or your service. But there's also going to be things that you might be doing for traffic acquisition more broadly. And this is going to tie in probably to your blogging strategy and maybe your support center strategy, to think about, okay, well, what are we doing in terms of how to? So there's obviously going to be a lot of queries online that are related to your particular niche or your particular area of business. And you should then start to think, well, okay, how, based on the keywords that we are trying to target, which of these queries would it be good to create a video for? These videos can be a lot longer, dependent on the complexity of the particular topic in question. So up to 20 minutes. I would recommend, generally speaking, mixing different shots. So you can have a bit of talking head, so you have that level of connection with an individual. Think about doing some close-up shots and screencasts if it's a physical product or a demonstration of something practical, or screencast if it's a software thing. And a good way to kind of start, again, if you're not really sure what to particularly create here, is think about what currently ranks for youtube.com for your unbranded keywords. So that's going to tell you which YouTube videos are out there online for the keywords that you are targeting that are actually already ranking. Simplest way to do this is with a tool, is with the likes of Ahrefs. So this is obviously a product some of you may be familiar with that is great for doing keyword research in general, SEO, research and strategy work. And what you can do here is you can type in all your keywords and then determine the traffic share by domain. If you then type in youtube.com, that's going to tell you which of your keywords. So here in this example, there's 25 keywords that YouTube currently ranks for of the keywords that I'm targeting. And we then have a list of different keywords that we might want to go and create videos for, because here are unbranded keywords that we can create an interesting tutorial or informational video about that YouTube currently takes a snippet for, and we might then stand a chance to rank instead of YouTube with our website and drive traffic to us instead of YouTube. And of course, you can also think about creating vlogs. So, obviously currently you are probably investing in blogging, and because of your own WordPress, you're probably certainly bought into investing in blogs, and you can just augment and support your blogs with video. So instead of trying to necessarily reinvent the wheel or do brand new things like unbranded how-to videos, you can also think simpler and just start thinking about which of my blog posts would benefit from the inclusion of a video. So these will often be 3 to 10 minutes in length or so, just straight up scripted single shot videos. So you can shoot these very simply with just one camera, and use them to support your existing blog strategy rather than reinvent the wheel. So probably some quick wins there for some of you. And lastly, if you've done all that stuff and you've kind of got your hygiene content in order, then you can start to think about long form creative content. So things like podcasts and interviews and webinars and this kind of thing we're doing now. These are obviously going to be longer, so between 20 minutes and an hour. All this sort of content that's maybe got more thought to it in terms of being more creative, more discussional, maybe less structured in its approach as well. And the way to make this successful is really to think about targeting a niche audience. So very, very focused audience. So probably, a subset of your customer base. And I think the best way to think about this is like to try and target it at your personal customer nerds. So find your nerds, find the customers who are most passionate about what you do, and make them the kind of core target. And if you've done all that, then you can really elevate things if you want to, and go and essentially make like a movie, which is something I did a few years ago with a company called Wistia. I mentioned them earlier. I used to work with them, and they won a B2B software company that makes video hosting, and ended up winning 2 Webby Awards by making an original series that was essentially a fly-on-the-wall documentary about the process of making ads for different budgets. And if you really want to take things to the next level, that's kind of the North Star of what you should be aiming for in terms of traffic acquisition. But some of you are probably a long way away from that, so you're thinking, well, I'm not doing video right now. Where should I actually think about starting? And I would recommend starting with the About Us video, and then product videos, and then from there start to think about things that you can do yourself. Now, the big question is often when to spend on high production values versus not. And I would recommend for the first couple of videos that you do, you probably want to get some people in just to support and start to help you find that brand voice. So for your product videos and About Us videos, maybe thinking about bringing an agency in to support. But for the things that you're then going to create that are perhaps less effort, less complicated, definitely start to think about doing that in-house. So for your support videos, for your how-to videos, for vlogs, all that kind of thing, this is all the content that's very accessible now to amateur creators, people who've never picked up a camera before and are able to do this themselves just very, very simply. And don't let it feel like this is beyond you, because it really isn't. And the technology and the hardware and the software that's available is getting better and more accessible all the time. Just for an example, here's what I am shooting with today. Now, this is my little rig that I looked at the start, and this is perhaps slightly higher end, but looks pretty good in terms of general video production. And this is just me in my house, and with relatively inexpensive, apart from the camera, relatively inexpensive bits of hardware that I'm using to do this. And if you would like to use similar, you can think about investing in something like this. So this is my recommendation for $500 professional video kit that I use on a daily basis almost, which is a Logitech Brio 4K webcam. That's about $200 or 120 sort of euros or so. A Blue Yeti microphone, a couple of LED light panels, and a phone that you've already got. Now, this webcam will allow you to shoot really great talking head content, and you can then use the microphone to support that with any narration that you might need, using some simple lights to just elevate and improve the quality of your visuals as well. And then you can use your phone to just get any additional B-roll shots. So maybe for bits of product, maybe you want to record and shoot your screen if you're demoing something, and you can use your phone just to do this very simply. And then string it all together with a free or cheap editing software like you can use Windows Movie Maker, you can use Adobe Premiere Elements, whatever you want. Even iMovie on Mac is pretty good as well. So nothing is too difficult these days, and you can even start to use some simple software on your mobile if you want to create things as well. So if you've got nothing else, I'm sure you can raise hopefully $500 to create and buy a very simple kit to get started. So once you have all your wonderful video content that you're expanding and you're creating more and more on a regular basis, the next question is, how do you then optimize this content for search? Well, it's an interesting and slightly complicated question. I think first we need to start to think about how Google thinks about video. Now, Google doesn't think about video in the same way that it thinks about other media. So think about text. What does Google think about text? Well, it views it as part of an HTML page that lives at a specific URL on a crawlable domain, and it will often, pull and move this content and feature it in, rich snippets or answer boxes and things like that. But ultimately, this is always attributed to a specific page, and that's kind of how Google thinks of text. Sits in the body of a page in the HTML. What about images? Well, images are slightly different because Google kind of crawls and indexes those as independent assets. If you go to Google Images, the pages that come up will be often files at a URL that ends in .jpg or .png or whatever. It depends on the particular asset itself, and it will then be attributed to the page it was found on, but then indexed separately. Now, video is kind of almost slightly between the two. Google sees video as part of an HTML page in much the same way that it sees text. So it never kind of allows you to link directly to the video asset itself, but it will always index the video as part of the page, and in a sense index the page as a video, which is slightly unusual. Or it will see the video as part of a post on a social platform, usually YouTube. So Google thinks of video slightly differently, and we need to sort of think of video slightly differently therefore as well, because just having video on your website is not enough. You also have to do some additional work to get things like this to happen, to ensure that your video is actually visible on your website and they are visible in the search results, not just for youtube.com if you're using YouTube as your video hosting platform, but also for your website as well. And of course, the reason we want to do this is because we are trying to drive traffic to our website rather than just drive traffic to Google's website. And this is the problem of the difference between YouTube SEO and video SEO. YouTube SEO, we're driving traffic to YouTube, we're driving views to YouTube. Video SEO, we are driving traffic to our own website, and we are using video as a traffic acquisition tool. So in order to do this, we have to, because Googlebot is not quite sophisticated enough to be able to find and understand the video on its own, we have to do some extra work to provide that data. So what we need to do is essentially provide schema.org data within either the body or the head of the HTML page, the body using microdata formatting or the head using JSON LD. Sound complicated? Kind of is, but it's not when you get your head around it. Essentially, there's just a series of bits of information that you need to provide in your each page that explains to Google or other search engine crawlers what the video is, where it is, where they can find the thumbnail, the captions, and the actual video file itself. So essentially, there is you need to provide the title, the duration, the description, and the captions if you've got them, and of course, critically, the thumbnail and the video itself. So a few tips for how you can actually optimize this. What you need to do is to think about, firstly, the title. Well, the best video title should really be less than 60 characters so that it's not unnecessarily truncated within the search results themselves. So we don't want it to be cropped. We want to actually see the whole title. So all of these are good examples from the Yoast team. We then also should start to think about a description, and the description, unlike the title, which needs to be, the title needs to be very editorially driven, so something that's aimed at generating clicks, getting people to click through and actually end up hitting watching that video. So think about it from an editorial perspective. Can you provide something interesting that hints at a problem that's going to be resolved in the video or intrigues people in much the same way that you might think about writing a great title of a blog post? Whereas for the description, you need to think a bit more in terms of plain, clearly speak. So much like you would an SEO meta description, same thing, you need to write this and make sure that it's obvious what you're trying to do. The duration, which we'll get onto, should be automatically included. But what you do need to do is when you're going through the editing process of your video, ensure that you're cutting the video to the appropriate length to optimize for the use case in question. So if there's a product video query in the search and your video is 10 minutes long, no one's going to click that. They want to watch something that's 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So as I mentioned earlier, each video type has a good length that it's appropriate for it, and just make sure you're cutting things in that way. You also need to include the captions, and here you just need to make sure that you're getting a professional transcript for all the videos that you're doing. I use a company called 3Play Media for that, but there's lots and lots of good services out there that will do it very, very cheaply, usually at about just 10 cents or so a minute for the content. And then you need to also include the upload date. Again, this is often automatically included, which we'll get onto, but it's worth bearing in mind when you're optimizing the metadata that there is often a recency bias with video content. Not to say that you can't rank with older content, but particularly for anything that's sort of an informational or how-to query, people are often going to want to click something that's clearly quite recent and up to date. And from that perspective, the best thing to do is just to make sure that you are regularly updating your video content, not necessarily with anything particularly new, but just maybe tweaking the edit slightly, maybe just adding a tiny bit of extra information if possible. Or if you don't want to do that, you could just republish it anyway and pretend it's newer than it is, so that you're getting that upload date visible in the search results and making sure that Google think your video is new, and therefore users are more likely to click on it if it is a query that they deem to need more recency, or indeed is part of a query deserves freshness QDF search. And then, of course, the most important thing about optimizing video metadata is actually the thumbnail, because in the search results, the thumbnail is the thing that is going to get the most clicks and the thing that is going to affect your click-through rate the most, because the thumbnail is the thing that differs in terms of video result from a standard organic result. So this is the thing you need to spend the most time optimizing. And this is not just a technical task, but also a creative one. So I've put together a little example of what I think is a very well-optimized thumbnail, and it's this one. And what you can see here is we have some key elements that make this very effective. Now, what's good about it is that there is a human face, and a human face is very important because a lot of studies have shown that we are more likely to engage with images that include a human face. It's more eye-catching, it brings our attention, and as we're scrolling through the search results, we want to be drawn to something that's going to capture our attention. It's also got bold colors that really stand out and help also draw the eye, which is something that's very important. So make sure that you're using bold colors, ideally human face if it's relevant for the content in question. We've got the brand logo there, so the Yoast brand logo as well. So we're able to kind of just have that brand touch point. Even if somebody doesn't actually click through, if they see our result in the search results, they're still seeing and having that little very, very small minor brand touch point. And of course, we've also got there quite big, quite clear text that provides a subtext and perhaps a more, almost like a secondary H1 title in the search results that provides additional information about the content itself. So in actual situ, it might look like this. And this is going to be something that draws the eye, is much more interesting to look at as you go through and you're scrolling through and potentially finding a website to click on. And critically about this is you should make sure there's bold, high contrast colors in every thumbnail, use human faces where applicable, include a logo, and large stylized text. Most important is the text here. Make sure it's legible at a very, very small size, so 116 by 24 pixels, which is the smallest that your thumbnail is going to come up in the search results. So if it works there, it's going to work elsewhere, and it's going to look really nice, and you're going to get more clicks, you're going to get better ranking, you're going to get more traffic, and you're going to hit that nice flywheel that ends up bringing you all the lovely good stuff that we want from SEO. So that's my recommendation for thumbnails. So instead of just relying on the default thumbnail provided by your video hosting platform, or standard little screenshot from that's picked up through the platform itself, and a little just a frame from the video, go and spend a lot of time in Photoshop with your designer or whomever, and make really good specific templates for your video thumbnails that you can then roll out over time, improve and iterate on, and just make that a really important consideration for your video SEO. If all that sounds very complicated, don't worry, because as Jono intimated at the start there is a tool that does all this for you, and it is the Yoast video SEO plugin for WordPress. And this will essentially provide all of that data that I mentioned to Google search, and it will do it with all the schema.org markup that you'll needed to get your videos ranking. So just make sure, if you don't have all the technical know-how or the ability to do this yourself, go and use the plugin. It will solve all the problems. You still need to think about optimizing the title and the thumbnail as I talked about, but the core technical aspect of this optimization is handled by the plugin itself. If you've done all that, then you're at the next lovely stage of really thinking more deeply about optimization. And you can start to use some of the new fancy tools that Google have launched that allow you to do some really fun stuff like this. So you might have discovered, you might have seen this in the search results already, but here you can see these key moments that Google are pulling together. Now, these essentially also are triggered by schema in the JSON LD here and the example there on the site. And what these are is it's a clip schema that indicates a start point and an end point for a specific type of aspect of the video. So if you have a longer video on your website, this is sometimes done automatically with YouTube if you put the different markers in the description, but you can do it for your website as well just by adding this clip schema, and this will allow you to have these really nice, great big pieces in the search results that point to different areas like chapters in the video, and all these links that click through. So if you can get this type of result, you're obviously going to get a lot more clicks because it's very eye-catching, and there's loads and loads of links to your website. So a real amazing hack that not many people are using thus far to get more traffic. And I would recommend, if you're a bit more ambitious, start to think about whether you can use clips and chaptering for longer form content to start to drive traffic this way as well. Alrighty, so what are we actually going to do in terms of our content distribution? Because of course, our website is not the only channel that we have to work with. Our website may be our primary channel in terms of traffic acquisition, but video, as I mentioned at the start, is everywhere. Video is on all these different social platforms. And we then need the question of how can we tie our website and the social platforms together? Should we just put our videos everywhere, or should we think differently? Now, the old model, which is what I kind of term content distribution, or how it's been sort of framed, is the idea that what we do is we create a piece of content, we create this great asset, and then we push it out to as many people as possible by putting it to every channel that we can, maybe changing it slightly. So obviously on Facebook, we might want to have captions because Facebook's primarily silent autoplay. TikTok is going to have to be shorter, but we might sort of essentially try and push the same video everywhere in order to meet the audience where they are. And this is often a bit of language that you think about and is often talked about and has been over the last 10 years of appropriate marketing strategy. Is your audience are out there, they're on social media, and you need to get them, you need to get your content to them. But I think this model is actually becoming very redundant and is actually not the way to think about video or indeed marketing more broadly where we are, because your audience are everywhere. And the same people that might be viewing your stuff on Facebook are the same people that are viewing it on YouTube. And the question is not in terms of, can you reach all these people? It's how do you best engage with them? Reach has become a solved problem. Reach is a problem that, we can just solve by paying a small amount of money to Facebook or Google to send our content in front of the people that they know are likely to engage with it. And this has been a solved problem. We don't need to worry about reach. We instead need to worry about engagement and how we are driving relationships over the longer term with our potential customers in the platforms that matter. And the problem with just sending the video everywhere and pushing people to social platforms and pushing the same content out everywhere is we, by default, encourage customers to engage with us on platforms that we don't get much value from. So customers watching our content on Facebook are much less likely to engage with us or buy a product than those who are watching it on our website. And those watching it on YouTube are highly unlikely to then visit our website and turn around and end up buying stuff. So we need to think about doing something slightly differently. Otherwise, we face the problem whereby our entire marketing strategy over time just becomes we are sending traffic to properties owned by Facebook and Google, and they control every aspect of our marketing. And this might be the right answer for some businesses, but for others, it's not. So we need to think about a new model of content distribution, which is one that I call audience development. And here, what we do is essentially take the model, which has been popularized by media companies for a long period of time now, and increasingly is something that you see more and more businesses doing, which is we will have a core video asset. We will make that single major big video of whatever particular campaign or whatever content we're doing. And we will from there then do separate cuts where we will make little clips if it's longer form content. So, short 2 to 3 minute videos that are bits that comprise a longer video. We'll make trailers, so just short, quick summaries of content that hints at what might be great in the full version. And maybe montages, so quick, snappy cuts that pull together lots and lots of small parts of a longer piece of video. And we then distribute the core asset to our website and the clips and the trailers and the montages to the social platforms. And the reason why this works very well is not only because we can then, by hinting at longer content being more valuable elsewhere and on our website, we can then drive people from social platforms to our website with the promise of more engagement and more value if they decide to move from that platform to our owned media platform. But we also do better on social media, because the kind of content that typically works on these social platforms is shorter summary content. People don't often sit down on Facebook, for example, and watch an entire webinar. They may do on YouTube, but even then, it's not quite as they would do on your website. So instead, thinking about chopping up content that serves what often the very short engagement and short attention spans that people have on social media, by creating snappier, more interesting content that teases your longer content, that is really optimized for those platforms, each one, and then gets people to think about their next stage of engagement being an engagement on an own platform, allows you to get the most value from the audience whilst providing them with the most value in terms of content and overall content consumption experience. And what you can then do, instead of meeting your audience where they are, bringing the audience to you, you can use social media as a tool for traffic acquisition, which then supports your video SEO strategy, where you're using search as a means of traffic acquisition as well. And as a consequence, the two strategies in used together allow you to drive traffic in the most meaningful and effective way. So start to think about how you are going to bring your audience to you, and then what you're going to do for them when they arrive. So give them a great experience, a wonderful experience of consuming content in a distraction-free environment on your website, where they can then maybe sign up for notifications or an email list or whatever it might be that you're trying to do to build those leads and build that database that's going to drive value for you in the long term. And this, of course, builds some questions about which video hosting platform should you use, and how should you use YouTube and Facebook alongside your own website. Well, I think there's, basically here's my view on a quick summary of when you should use which platform. I think YouTube is best for certainly consumer goods brands, where you don't really care about someone coming to your website, because most sales are done in store. If you only care about reach and you only care about engaging in a kind of a fairly superficial brand engagement way, then YouTube is definitely the best platform for you. And if you are a non-commercial site that doesn't have budget to pay for kind of video hosting, then YouTube is a great alternative. The downside with using YouTube as your core video hosting platform is there's three main things. The first is that related videos will always pop up at the end of your videos now. YouTube turned this off. I think it was early last year or end of 2019. So now any embedded video automatically has related videos that pop up at the end. And what this means is if you click on one of those videos, you then get taken off the website into YouTube. So it can become a way of essentially losing traffic rather than gaining it. Also, YouTube a few months ago essentially said that they will force ads on any video, or they have given themselves the right to have ads on any video on YouTube, no matter whether or not you have accepted them. So expect that embedded videos in the not too distant future may have ads on them, and they could come from anyone, could come from your competitors. It's the price you pay for free hosting. It's somebody else's ads, essentially. And lastly, the other problem is that YouTube can rank very, very well in search, which is great, but also it can mean that people click on YouTube instead of your own website. So you need to think about how you're going to manage that, and whether you want all your content on YouTube, or whether there's some content for which actually it's better just to have it only on your own website, because traffic acquisition is more important for you than reach in that regard. Vimeo is really good if you're like an e-commerce business or maybe a B2C business. I think Vimeo is probably the best platform, particularly if you have a lot of views, because it's a bit cheaper than Wistia, which I think is the best platform for B2B businesses, because it has more tools for lead generation, lead nurturing, and comes with a kind of user-based tracking as well. Lastly, how can you measure video SEO? Well, there's two tools that you really need. And the first is, of course, our trusty Google Search Console. And this will show you where videos are appearing, for which particular queries videos are appearing, and will also show you which kind of rich results you're getting and how many clicks and impressions you're getting for your videos. Over time, you can improve this, and a good way to kind of track your thumbnail optimization is to look at the click-through rate versus the impressions that you're getting over time as you try to improve your thumbnails. The other tool that you might need is YouTube Analytics. Obviously, if you're using YouTube, this is going to be important, but particularly in terms of managing that that relationship between your own site and YouTube. So I'm assuming most of you are going to want YouTube for at least some content, and you're going to obviously want some content on your website. A good way of knowing whether or not the content that you have on YouTube is actually whether YouTube's providing value is whether or not you're getting views from YouTube search and YouTube suggested videos. And YouTube Analytics, the traffic sources report is going to tell you this. So here we can see that there's about sort of just over 15% of videos are coming from there, whereas most are coming from the embedded player on the website for this report here. So this tells us that YouTube isn't providing a huge amount of value, but some traffic is coming from YouTube. Then within external, what we don't want to see, and luckily in this case it doesn't have it, but you don't want to see a huge portion of your traffic coming from places like Twitter, Google, and Google search, because if they're all coming from other social platforms and from Google search, that indicates that actually you could probably get that traffic yourself if you optimize your website correctly and you implement video SEO properly. The exception to that rule is if you don't have a very strong domain. If you have a very weak domain, but you really want to rank for a query, then actually using YouTube can be beneficial in that circumstance, just in terms of trying to own that search result, even suboptimally. But again, you need to try and experiment and see what works for you and your business. So that's it for now. I hope that is a useful little introduction to a few principles of video optimization and video SEO, and gives you some food for thought of what you can do next. I'm going to just close this presentation and move back to my actual face.
Very nice. Right. Oh, no, I think you've just hidden yourself. Oh, where's he gone? Has Phil just left accidentally? Oh, that's sad. Well, bear with us while we try and get him back. Very complicated. That was good though, wasn't it? Really interesting. So we are going to do a Q&A now, if we can manage to get Phil back in while I just pester him.
Yes,
there he is. Good work.
Sorry about that. I pressed the close screen button rather than close screen share. Sorry about that.
Live video is an incredibly challenging thing, right? Good job.
I should know better.
Nice. You should. Damn it! No, that was really, really good. Thank you. Really fascinating. As somebody who really hasn't ever worked up the nerve to really jump in on video and get involved, there's a huge amount of stuff that I don't know, so that's really interesting. Thinking of things we don't know, we did have a whole bunch of questions, but before we do those, I have been asked very politely to do this. Does this work? Can I add that? You should all now have a little button on your page, maybe, there we go, tells you where you can register for our next webinar before we finish this one, which I believe is next week, which is our monthly SEO news, where we talk through what's happening, what Google are up to, what's new in the world of WordPress, SEO, etc. So with that out of the way, do feel free to go register. Similar format to this with me and Yoast. That'll be very cool. So back to Phil. We had a whole bunch of questions. Hello.
Right, I can't see all the questions. It seems we missed some from the start. Is that?
Oh dear. Is it because you left and came back in again? Maybe.
Could be. You'll just have to tell them. You'll just have to ask me them.
Okay, I'll work through these one at a time. Maybe not all of them. So I've gone through and consolidated some. Guys, if you have any questions, still feel free to ask them. I'll try and catch them. But there's definitely a bunch that have been upvoted. So let's do these first. So we had a lot of questions about speed, which I know was last week's webinar, but maybe you might have some opinions. Essentially, the general direction was putting videos on web pages is slow. What do we do about that? How do we balance the trade-offs? Have you got any tips?
Yes, and my main tip, and this is going to sound very product placement, is to use the Yoast Video SEO plugin, because it now essentially solves the problem of speed. So the essential issue with video speed, and sometimes the page speed testing tools kind of doesn't give you a very good flavor of this. The issue is that it can be render blocking, and it can basically prevent a first meaningful paint. So what we mean by that is that it can essentially load up the web page and the video takes ages in the background to load, and it doesn't appear, so it looks kind of crummy, or that it loading the video prevents other elements of the page loading. That's what we want to avoid. And the good thing about the Yoast plugin is it essentially fixes that so that the thumbnail comes up straight away. It's very, very visible, and then it will load everything else in the background. So you want to make use of asynchronous loading, asynchronous JavaScript to serve the video. And actually, Wistia have solved that problem natively very well, and that's nice and quick. YouTube is really slow because it loads all the ad script, but the Yoast plugin fixes that. So if you're using YouTube, pair it with the Yoast plugin and it will solve the question for you. The only other thing I would say is where it gets really dodgy is if you want to do like auto-playing background video. Auto-playing background video can be a real sting on site speed. And I would just generally avoid it unless you have a very, very good at like very tight compression, can do a very low bitrate video, are able to have few colors or something so that it kind of blends simply. But like a high octane, Michael Bay kind of video that runs in the background is just going to kill your site speed. And in my view, doesn't actually look that good. So I'd avoid that. But otherwise, yeah, use the Yoast plugin. Don't put too many videos on one page. Instead, think about thumbnails that can then click out and load the second page, either with just like, if you want to be really fancy with push state or something else. But there's all the technology there now to make it easy to do. You just need to make use of what's out there.
Nice. That's really good. You covered off another question there about how many videos are too many. And it feels like the answer is generally like make it like a gallery and have link through to other pages that have videos on. Yeah,
exactly. If you want to do a gallery, don't put them all on one page. Have a single page per video and make sure that the core gallery page is like thumbnails. There are good ways of executing this that allow you to essentially spin up the pages automatically so that when you click play on the video, it will, maybe use URL parameters or whatever to just create that page on the fly. That works. But yeah, you just don't try and load loads and loads of video assets in one go. If you do need to load a lot of videos on one page, 5 tops.
Nice. Good number. Good random number. We had quite a few questions came up about the relationship between videos and captions. And transcripts, and whether there's a kind of SEO strategy in doing more, like can you take them out of the video? Should you show them on the page? Is there stuff you can be doing with that?
Yeah. So I think you can, and I would say that's sort of a editorial creative decision. So if you're including them in the schema, in the JSON, Google have them. They have, it's like giving Google copy. They know it's the captions. They know it's there. They know what to do with it. So you don't have to. But at least make sure you've definitely got it in the JSON, so it's there and it's visible. In terms of like you taking them out and putting them as like transcripts on the page, I think you definitely can do that if you want to do like a vlog or a transcribed podcast. I then think that's better if you then take that and editorialize it. So crop it up and make it like an interview or provide paragraphs, not just like a great big wall of text. So actually think about using it as a means of influencing and changing the quality of the content on the website and the page itself. But you don't have to. That's an editorial choice.
That's cool. I'm going off script, but I see a whole lot of progress in YouTube, and particularly in automatically captioning and kind of machine learning driven auto captioning. Do you think that as that gets better, we won't need to worry about captions at all? Or do you think it's still worth doing that kind of editorial transformation?
I think it's still worth it because YouTube are much better, but they're not perfect, and they seem to pay right now more credence to those that you're manually putting in yourself. And again, like the YouTube captions are only relevant in terms of YouTube optimization for YouTube.com. And if you want to drive traffic to your website, you need to do the extra work to provide Google with that data, even if you're using a YouTube embed, because in Google's mind, those captions that they've automatically transcribed relate to that YouTube video in terms of its instance on youtube.com. So if you want your website to rank, you've got to do the extra work.
Gotcha. Thinking of YouTube and their kind of ownership of this, we had quite a few questions about the clip schema and the rich results. One of the things that I've noticed is that Google's information page about clip schema says that it's only available to a limited number of partners. And when you do some digging, it looks like that's essentially YouTube and maybe 1 or 2 other platforms. So I guess if you want to take advantage of that clip stuff, you have to play in YouTube. And it feels like that's an interesting trade-off.
So, yes, it won't be like that for long because I know that they are speaking to a lot of different companies and they are trying to get this integrated with a lot of other platforms. So I would start thinking about it now because it will be not long before that's covered with other partners. And as we've seen several times in this kind of cycle, Google often start with trying something new with a small group of people, then open it up to more. and then it becomes publicly open. And that was true with video results in the first instance back in 2012, whenever that was, something like that. It was YouTube initially, then it was Vimeo and Dailymotion and a few others that were quite popular back in the day. And then it became accessible to everyone. And then they made the criteria a bit stricter because lots of people were spamming it. And we'll see the same cycle as we always do. So I would start thinking about it now. Yes, YouTube only have it right now, but I know that they are working with lots of other platforms to get that up and running.
Nice. New toys, shiny new toys. We had a really interesting question, which I hadn't considered at all, which is how does this differ for videos that aren't accessible publicly? Say they're behind a paywall or they're members only. Is it the same play or are there different considerations?
So I would say if you're doing something by a paywall, the best way to think about that is then to, on the version of the page that sits in front of the paywall, have a short trailer or a demo or a clip. So
nice.
A short bit of the video so that you can then index it, get it ranking and everything, and then make sure that when someone lands, they have that visibility and they actually have some interesting content they can watch and hopefully be hooked in. If you want to kind of hack that a bit, you can provide in the schema the information for the actual main video. So you're providing the duration of the longer video, but then when a user lands, they're going to be served the shorter one as well. So, it's not cloaking, it's not bait and switch, but you are able to provide that level of authenticity while providing good user experience as well.
Nice. That's cool. I'm just skimming some other QAs. We had all sorts of different stuff. We had a technical one, which I think is worth looking at, which is how do you best compress videos? What are the tips? What are the tricks? You say that like the big Michael Bay style, lots of colors, lots of resolution are sluggish. What does good look like?
Gosh, okay. So good looks like how techy do you want to get? So variable bitrate, HLS streaming. So essentially, you need to be able to have streaming that comes in at a bit rate that will be determined by what the particular browser in question can handle, and the connection speed. So you need to be able to basically deal with that in a very clear and fast way. There's a few tools that do that, and a few platforms provide that level of like detailed multi-stream, multi-bit rate streaming. So essentially, they'll have like the way it works is they'll have like multiple different videos all in one go, and they'll just serve the version of the video that is most appropriate, and then they'll hot swap it as and when if the bitrate improves or as it changes in terms of the actual bandwidth. Wow. So that works. In terms of like the editing process, you then need to basically get really good at. You just have to use good compression. So everyone still uses H.264. That is fine. You can use that and just make sure that you're using the highest quality level of compression in Premiere or whatever, cutting that down as low as possible, maybe variable bit rate of about 1.5 megabits a second, and if even lower if you can get away with it if it's not too like complicated video. So essentially you want to get the bit rate as low as possible without it looking bad, and that will depend on the complexity of the video itself, and then you want to implement the HLS streaming.
Wow, I took some notes.
There we are. Technical.
No, that's good. Okay, let's do. So you touched on this in various places, but I think it's worth just revisiting because there are a lot of questions. Essentially, the where should I host this question, and it's a question of on my own website stroke server or on YouTube or on Vimeo, and what happens if my audience is in China, and what are the moving parts of that help me decide where should I put this.
Yeah, so if your audience is in China, you can't use YouTube, so you've got to use something else. I think Vimeo struggles in China a little bit as well. Wistia does work to an extent in China. You might want to do it on your own server. So if you're on WordPress, you can use VideoPress. It's pretty cheap, and build your own little CDN or something to serve with it if you're worried about the firewall taking things down. So I mentioned it depends on the kind of business you are and what you are trying to do. The reason why you might want to self-host is that you are trying to scale things up and you don't want to be spending a lot of money with a third-party host. So you don't want to be spending a lot of money with Vimeo and Wistia, and the prices can get quite pricey if you have a lot of views. Vimeo and Wistia are very good if you are a business trying to do marketing on your own website. The downside is that they can be a bit pricey, but they also deal with syndication to YouTube if you want it. YouTube's good because it's free, and it means you only have to deal with one platform. But I would generally think that most business websites need to be thinking about using a Vimeo or Wistia rather than YouTube, because the problem that you have is a YouTube embed becomes a window into YouTube that then just leaks traffic. And it doesn't, even if you want to be using YouTube and benefiting from YouTube, it doesn't preclude having both. So you can have the content on your website with that paid platform that gives you more control, more data, and it doesn't include ads. Whereas and then you can use YouTube as you want for other content, and you can put the content on YouTube as well. But yeah, so that's kind of the way I would think about it, generally speaking.
Nice, that's handy. We had a really interesting question that got me thinking from Rich saying, essentially, Rich uses a plugin to pull in third-party external videos into the content. So say a blog post that then goes and sources some relevant videos. Is there a strategy for gaining some kind of SEO value from other people's videos in your content, maybe even when you don't necessarily hand curate those, or is that just a scary risk?
Ooh, good question. I think you could. You could certainly put together so there is one thing you can definitely do, and this isn't really an SEO play, but it is a nice YouTube optimization play, which obviously wasn't really the topic today. But you can build a playlist on YouTube that includes other people's videos, and you can basically brand that playlist and make it like a curation of great stuff. And that's a really nice way to engage with more people and to start to essentially provide more of a community value. And the great YouTube channels are always they're never business YouTube channel. They always have their own identity. It's a sub-brand. It's something that speaks to a specific focus of what that business is trying to do on that platform that is a community platform as much as a search engine. And that is a great way in which you can engage there. It depends on your business. You might be able to pull some stuff together with UGC. You might be able to, string a few videos together and create something out of it. But I think that's a case-by-case question, because you obviously don't want to get into the space where you're passing other people's content off as your own, which is the risk.
Risky, yeah, makes sense. Okay, time for one more question, I think. And I'm going to go right back to the beginning of your talk. You showed a chart on the volume of video consumption exploding. And there were lots of questions about, is this just COVID, etc. And you said, no, you think this is the beginning or the continuation of an ongoing trend. Where does that go? What happens next? What are the next formats we need to be thinking of? What's the next TikTok? Is it 6-second videos? Is it 2-hour documentaries? Where should we be aiming for?
Gosh, what a question. I could talk for hours on this, but I know we're a bit on time. So I'll give you a few short-term and a few long-term trends. So here's one short-term trend that I just think is such a no-brainer that everyone should start doing it. Everyone's going to want to listen to blogs. So have embeddable audio at the top of a blog post that's press play and you can listen. Most people, smartphones are getting better at dealing with the fact that people want to consume audio and video sometimes with the phone in their pocket, not actually with the screen locked. And if you can deal with the platform like an embedded podcast essentially on top of a blog post, makes things a lot more accessible. Also provides accessibility for people who maybe are visually impaired. You can actually read stuff. So embedded audio on all editorial content, I think, is an obvious trend in where this is going. So I think audio is going to become more embedded in the way that video has started to become. So that's one small thing. I think the next trend is probably not short things. I think we've kind of really gone through a lot of short video now. Everything. I don't think Vine is going to come back. TikTok is what that could have been, and that I think has owned it very well. Instagram has its own thing, and I don't really think Instagram TV is going to kind of become the great thing, but it might just sort of sit as a kind of side thing with Instagram. I think the next thing is longer form content, and we're seeing this with the growth in podcasts and the growth in businesses doing content like this that is more creative, that is more casual, that is designed to be consumed by people in a kind of a general interest way as well as a specific purpose. So I think longer form is where it's going to go. And I think that you can imagine lots of platforms starting to curate that content and starting to promote it. And I think that if you can get on that now and start to think about how can you communicate with your audience in a very specific way, then that's going to make things really fly. And the way I'm thinking about it is in terms of like essentially niche TV shows for specific audiences. So Netflix have created everything under the sun, right? They've just started to just build huge libraries of content. But what we need to think about is, okay, well, what are they never going to create? Well, they're never going to create the kind of thing that only appeals to a small group of people, but that those small group of people would really, really love. And I think that's the space where businesses can start to play more in terms of branding and creative media, is to create things that are going to really appeal to a very, very small group of people and become their champions and become the kind of voice of their community and their culture. And if you do that, if you can become the person that owns the culture of your best advocates, you're going to win. No one can beat you. That's just the ultimate ticket to success with brand and with marketing. So that's the longer term trend that I see.
That's fascinating. I guess 20 years ago, the equivalent would have been to have launched a magazine or to a radio show, and you just go, we're going to own this space. And now the time is right? Adoption's spiking, and there are gaps. Nice, very exciting. Right, we won't keep you all night because that was a very intense session, and you've covered a lot of ground. So thank you so much for doing this. It was lovely to hang out and to absorb a ton of knowledge.
Wonderful to sit with you. Thank you.
Yeah, we had loads of questions still. Is there somewhere where people can find you and pester you with all sorts of questions about hosting mechanics and video?
Yes, of course. Probably the best place is Twitter. It's just at Phil Nottingham. Or if you want something longer, you can send me an email, and it's philnottingham@gmail.com.
Nice, thank you very much. And before we go, I should remind you of three things. One, you should get a video of this to your email, which is delightfully topical and kind of circular. And two, don't forget that you can register now for our SEO News webinar next week on the 20th. And three is, we have a video SEO plugin that Phil was very kind to talk about how well it handles all of the schema stuff and data stuff. Do go check that out on our website. I think that's it from us. Thanks again, Phil. This was lovely, and I can't wait to catch you in person and to maybe continue our discussion on finding remote, interesting places to go to.
That would be great. Thank you very much, Johnny.
It was here. Thanks for questions. We'll see you all later. Bye.